Waiting for it to catch up. Cool, cool. See how all this goes. Mm, trying to get in. Yes. Someone suggested using our chickens for that. Of course it doesn't. Mm, uh, okay, cool. Chat box is working. Okay. I was making sure shit was working before we get into it. Um, cool. So we get this. We are here. Um, yay, Monday. Right? Okay. I'm gonna just hit everybody with a spreadsheet right off the beginning. It just doesn't make sense. Like trying to make sense of everything without spreadsheets is annoying. So, okay. As promised, we were going to talk about cost of living in the Omaha area, and which covers a significant portion of like Nebraska population. Um, is this everybody? No. Um, but it gives us enough to work around. Um, Essentially, if you're hitting the living prices for Omaha, you're going to pretty much cover the living cost for most people in the state. There's going to be a few outliers. Gas is one of them. Um, Horrific. I did mark this for political and social sensitive topics because anytime you talk about wages, um, someone always brings up politics. Well, and I don't want to get into uh, Republicans versus Democrats. I do not have the energy for dealing with that. You are talking to someone who registered nonpartisan for a reason. Um, so, um, I feel like most of our problems are because we've gotten too much into I'm a Democrat and then therefore I can only do these things. And if you're a Republican, you can only do these things and you have to vote this way. And if you don't, you're uh, disloyal to the party. And uh, being more loyal to the party rather than the people is how you get problems. And that's all I'm going to say on it. With that in mind, I know we touched base on the rent issues of Omaha, uh, like as a cursory glance. Um, in one of the other previous streams, I can't even remember which one now. Um, this is not is a little over a month since I did this. Um, if I go in, Yeah, last edit was on April 24th, so maybe not a month. Yeah, it was built on the 16th, so not quite a month ago. Um, we're for the sake of being able to see as many listed prices as possible without needing to contact a listing office or whatever for an apartment or a house or whatever, because I ran into that a lot on apartments.com. I went to Zillow, so you can yell at me about that as much as you want, but um, prices were much more upfront of what things were going to cost. Now, this does not take in pet deposits or anything. This was the basic rent that was posted for each listing. And I have 1,241 total listings that start from a studio and go up to a 5 bedroom. The it is like egregious at sometimes because they are wanting 5,500 for a 5 bedroom apartment. That was an apartment. It wasn't a house. It was an apartment. I was like, you gotta be shitting me. Um, but it is what it is. Okay. Um, Nebraska's minimum wage is $15 an hour. If you are not being paid $15 an hour, or if you have a job that is tip dependent, and after tips you are not making $15 an hour, you need to go to the labor reporting board and fucking report your employer. Nebraska decided $15 an hour was the bare minimum you needed to survive. Therefore, the companies need to be paying you $15 an hour or better. And I'm not going to argue about that. That isn't even a livable wage. That's a survivable wage. And I'm gonna, I will fight to death on that. There is a difference between a survivable wage and a livable wage. Yeah. Um, if you really want to get into it, on $15 an hour, if you are getting a studio apartment, not quite not quite 30%, 37% of your wages will go towards rent, and that is before taxes get and things like your retirement or anything get pulled out. But that is how they decide it at the Department of Labor, is your gross earnings, not your net earnings. So out of your gross earnings, nearly 37% will go to a studio apartment in the Omaha area at $15 an hour. That means that you have 40, uh, it's, let's see, 63% to go towards everything else. This is the taxes that you have to pay on your earnings. This is your retirement account. That is pet deposits. If you've got a garage, if you're having to, instead of driving, you're taking the bus, then you have to pay for your bus fares. Everything like that comes out of that 63%. And then they wonder why people don't have insurance. Um, mhm, mhm. Mhm. Uh-huh. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Because you're legally allowed to use your credit report. So if you screwed up, yeah, so well that's what hurts you. Yeah. Well, yeah, because credit cards can be, if you're not careful, very predatory. And even when you are careful, they're still for-profit organizations. So, well, yeah. Uh-huh. Well, yeah. Well, like I said, yeah, you can get one for $300, but your max, someone is charging $1,700 for a studio apartment. When you have that drastic of a range, we're talking $1,400 between the two. There's no way to look at that and say that, you know, well, so part of it is, yes, a lot of these are now owned by like private equity firms. And private equity firms are the bane of everybody's existence. Um, um, but that means that they do expect kind of an exorbitant amount of frickin' profit off of it. And that means that everything has to be overcharged. But on top of that, you have just aggressive property taxes that have to be paid. Um, and so that gets charged in. And then, yes, they are supposed to be, they can charge a portion of the rent for being used for maintenance. Okay. Now, the thing about that is that they're supposed to actually put it towards maintenance. Does every does every landlord do it? No. Are you likely paying off a mortgage? Yes. Is it likely that that mortgage is at like 12%? Also, yes. If you're lucky, it's at the 12%. Um, some of these mortgages are also exceptionally predatory. Um, um, I saw someone uh, complaining about like um, the mortgage offer that they got, and it was like something like 20%. I was like, no, go to a mortgage broker, not not your bank, to the mortgage broker, because a third party mortgage broker doesn't work for the bank; it works for you, and their commission comes off of getting you the best price. So they have a little bit more um, incentive to not get you completely fucked over by your mortgage. Um, so there's that. Um, but I went with rent because most people are renting, they're not buying. I'm gonna be honest. Some days I prefer renting over owning. Because why isn't that pipe fixed? Oh, right, because I'm the one who has to call the plumber and get it fixed. Uh-huh. Oh, like a foundation issue where they want to charge you like $20,000 to fix a foundation? Yeah. Um, yeah. I don't know. Some days I'm just like, yeah. Um, you're like, why is my mortgage payment so high? And it's like, it's not even my principal and interest payment. It's fucking house insurance. Oh, it's not even my property taxes killing me. It's the insurance company. Like, mm, but anyways, how does this translate to wages? If yeah, if we're actually trying to reach that median size of all dwellings, which is $1,360, um, you need to make sure that that is 30% of uh, 30% of your monthly earnings. Um, Now, at $15 an hour, that's not happening. But if we, as responsible business owners, want to be making sure that our people can meet at least that median of all sizes of dwelling, which is again $1,360, then our minimum wage for our company has to make that turn into 30% of total earnings. Um, you multiply it by three. Oh, you divide by 30% and that'll give you your total earnings. So I'm gonna just do that. That means that their monthly income has to be $4,533.33 before taxes. What that translates, um, what that means as a yearly and wage is um $54,400. The weekly wage would then be divided by 52 because there are roughly 52 weeks in a year. It's 52 and some change. Financial institutions just use 52. Okay. So per week, you need to be bringing in $1,046.15 before taxes. Um, Assuming 40 hours a week because that is the federal. I think that's still federal. Um, yeah, I think. I just go. Let's see. Um, what is it? What is full time in Nebraska? Because I think in Nebraska it's different. Uh, for health insurance eligibility, 30 or more hours is often used following federal guidelines. Cool. Um, we're gonna just use 40 for the sake of argument. Yeah. That is $26.15 an hour. And that's for 2026. Um, God only knows what it will be in 2027. But as a responsible business owner, we should be adjusting for that. With it being at 30%, that means that 70% of their check can go to taxes, insurance, blah, blah, blah. Now, there is a way for um, companies to take on 100% of the financial responsibility for insurance. There's even a way for it to just take on the financial duties of medical expenses for their employees. Um, and that's a medical insurance trust system. Basically, essentially, you take a portion of the company's profits after other expenses, operational expenses, and you go and put it in trust, and that trust fund with lawyers um, receives bills from the employees for things like um, prescriptions, doctor's visits, surgeries, uh, births, everything like that. Then those lawyers argue down the bills, and then the employees don't have to pay the bills. The trust pays the bills, and essentially, the employees are named as beneficiaries of the trust so long as they are working for the company. So, and that's how you get away from dealing with the overbearing insurance companies. Um, it is much more complex than that. That's just the basics. And there are significant number of rules involved with that. Uh, but and you can have an insurance company like handle the process of the trust. I don't trust them to do it ethically. Because they'll try and apply their own standards of what is or is not covered to the trust, even though it like won't meet the standards of the trust, the legal outlines of the trust. But yeah, that is an option that you can go through for doing insuring your employees. Um, Essentially, they just get I guess a charge card that is then presented, and it's essentially a very specific type of insurance card. And it's not an it's insurance card, yes, but it essentially says bill this person, which is all an insurance card really is. But um, instead of it going to like Blue Cross Blue Shield, it goes to this trust. This is legal entity in that is responsible for paying for it. So um, that is like my end goal because I don't think um my okay, if they're gonna make it so that instead of state sponsored health insurance, they're gonna make it tied to your employment, then your employment should have solid coverage of your health, because then they've essentially made employees assets of the company, which is bullshit. But um, essentially, they've made the legal responsibility of the medical um, well-being of the employees fall on the company. And I, as the company, or you as the company, should be putting the health and well-being of our employees in a high regard if we in fact believe that employees are in fact people and not property. Um, and last time I checked, employees were in fact people and not property, and therefore should be treated with the dignity of being a person. Um, and therefore, they should not be denied medical treatment just because they um they're older or they don't meet whatever health standard or blah blah blah. No, if they are a person and we believe in their personhood, then there is a basic level of decency and respect of personhood that should be there, and that is that we don't make the medical decisions, but we are financially responsible for it because the law has made us financially responsible for it by making it that we have to provide insurance, uh, an option for medical coverage through the employment, by making medical coverage completely reliant on someone's employment status with a specific organization. That is our responsibility. Um, and I believe the medical insurance trust or whatever it's actually called, because I can't remember all that shit. Um, and I am not a lawyer, and that is not my place of. It's like, I believe that's an estate lawyer I have to deal with for that. Or it'll probably be a mix of like estate and corporate and lawyers that you have to deal with to make that happen. Yeah. Um. Okay. So those are the big things involving wages as to what we need to be covering and be responsible for. The plan is to 100% cover the medical coverage of our people and to make sure that they have enough coming home on their paycheck to be able to cover basic living expenses. That's rent, that's groceries, that's gas to get to and from places, that's a car payment if they've got one, that's um, student loans if they have them, blah, blah, blah. Whatever they need to do. And then maybe, just maybe, I don't know, be able to exist outside of work. You know, go to restaurants, go get the t-shirt that they want without having to like really be afraid. If I buy this t-shirt, am I going to actually have enough for groceries? Or um, if I go to this restaurant, will I be able to pay my cell phone bill? those are not questions that our employees should ever have to be um, asking. Um, so that's where that is. I don't know what else we want to talk about. Um, because I was like thinking about um how much it costs actually per person in my house for us to get groceries, and it's like um I think we're we have 4 people living in this house, and I think overall we spend about $1,100 a month on food, which means that you're using about $275 a person, and we do not eat extravagant meals. They're very basic as fuck shit. Um, um, but it's like a proper meal. You're supposed it would probably run us about um $350 per person right now at current price for it. Um, so we're looking at $1,400 a month is technically probably where we actually need to be at to be able to cover like proper nutritional value. Um, and like having consistent meals because, you know, the reason that we can get away with it is that several of us just have atrocious eating habits. Um, mhm. Someone's got a gluten allergy, someone's got a seafood and shellfish allergy, there's soy allergies, yeah, no, it's not enjoyable. And shit gets expensive, particularly gluten-free shit. Like, avoiding soy and shellfish and everything is a hell of a lot easier than avoiding gluten. Um, like, mm, I do not enjoy having to go through. Does this have gluten? Well, luckily someone is right. It's like mostly it's like don't want to deal with the gut pains and everything for somebody. Um, but like hasn't killed them so far to have gluten. Um, but like I know it's uncomfortable as fuck. Um, like a really bad um, lactose intolerance, only involving bread. Yeah. Um, it's like someone who's really, really sensitive to milk products, and like, so they milk products are easier to avoid. It's like, I don't know. But yeah, it's like you've got to spend $1,400 a month for groceries, um, which is essentially the same as your fucking um rent for the month. And then like a car is what now, like $500 a month on average. We'll just go to Ford right now. Vehicles. Yeah, but they're common enough. What do you see? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, search inventory. I'm gonna just go with the cheapest one. Yeah. 30,350. Cool. $462.09 a month. View details. Um. Uh. Yeah. Um. What's the average term that people are using on their car? I haven't bought a car since 2016, so yeah. What like so 60 months is 5 years. We'll just use that. Um, it's 10% of the down payment. Not using. Um, so if you're 7% as the average currently, yeah. All right. So you're still looking at $463.38 there if you're going through their credit financing. 434. Um, so I mean, if you qualify, you're still looking at like $465 a month, roughly, for the cheapest vehicle on their market. Like obviously we could go through a whole spiel, but we'll use Ford for right now. So still $500 for a car. So you're at $1,400 for your rent, $1,400 for groceries. That's well, I guess if you're a four person, but that's $350 for a single person. Um, we'll just go off of a single person right now. Um, $500 car note. Let's see. Insurance is typically around $300 in Nebraska for car insurance. Um, for most drivers. So we're already at 25.50 and we haven't even gotten into utilities. We haven't even gotten into internet and cell phone are now considered utilities. Yeah, so it's yeah. So it's cell phone, internet, water, if you have gas, electricity, um, typically in the state of Nebraska, um, your water bill includes your sewage and waste management. Um, trying to think. Those are the major ones. Um, well, so internet, depending on what you've got, averages about 125 bucks a month, I believe is the average. Yeah, mine's 220. But there are people that are paying like 50 bucks right now. And that's what causes it to be so low. So we'll say 150 for rent, internet. Um, cell phone bills for a single person are what, like 100 bucks a month? Well, yeah, but like usually they've got tacked on bullshit. Okay, we'll go. Yeah, mine's not that much. That's why I'm like, I don't know. We'll put 70 as the average. Because I was thinking like Verizon, AT&T, Boost Mobile, stuff like that. But protection plans and stuff like that. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Well, the insurance isn't necessary either, but that's no, you can buy an iPhone outright. Well, yeah, you're yeah, well, that's why you put them off like portion way. Um, Also you run that fucker until they like kill it through the software. Um, well, every company does that. That's not just Apple. They got the lawsuit about it because were the ones that were like caught doing it, if that makes sense. And and they have the biggest pockets. Out of all, like the next one is like Samsung. Yeah, yeah. It was just Apple was the biggest giant at the time when that lawsuit came through. So of course they're the ones who got it because they had the most people that they could put onto a class action lawsuit. And typically, unless a class action lawsuit is like either egregious in content or just has a shit ton of people attached to it, they don't really get moved through the system quickly. And by quickly, I mean within 5 years. Um, mhm. But I mean, like, my Motorola ended up having the same issue where, yeah. So, but moving on, water bills are, yeah, it's typically what people have to, well, it depends on the apartment complex. Some cover water in the rent, some do not. No, because on most of those properties, no utilities were covered. Um, yeah, I'm gonna try Google, but if someone else wants to just chime in, uh, yeah, it's about what I thought it was. 50 to 80 bucks. So we're gonna use the 80 bucks. Mm-hmm. Electricity, would it, that is dependent on how the apartment building is built. So in really old school style apartments, they had central forced heating that went to all the apartments. And so essentially the end bill for that would get split between all the apartments. Um, in newer builds, they have a per unit heating system. And so it kind of depends on like how old is your building, have they upgraded the central heating or anything like that. Um, with that being said, um, according to Bottom Line Property Management, it is $110 to $160 a month. Nebraska Realty is also recording 110 to 170. We're gonna go with 110 because it's a single person. And then most apartments don't have gas anymore, but some do. But we're gonna go without gas for right now. So they're at 2960 already for just the basics. Um, no, this is the monthly. Okay. Yeah. hmm So essentially, so essentially, it's like your say your bills come out on the 1st of February, or within those first 15 days of February, let's say. Um, Essentially, your last paycheck of January and your first paycheck of February are supposed to go through to those. Um, if you're um, planning appropriately. Uh, yeah. But yeah, that's essentially how it's supposed to. Um, okay, so if they're making, and just put this in here real quick. That's what's left. Um, oh, what are taxes on that? Typically, people lose about what 30% of their paycheck to taxes and shit. I'm trying to remember because it was like at Walmart, I lost about 30% of my paycheck to um taxes, but also like retirement fund, blah blah blah. So it's like, okay, assume they're getting 70% of their check. How much are you losing to your taxes? Okay, so you're making 1560, uh 14 you have 1560 an hour. Yes. And you work 40 1560. How much do you actually lose off of it to taxes? Medical dental is not taxes. That's your insurance fees. But okay, you're losing about $500 to everything. $23.23 divided by 12. That would be $193.58 just for taxes alone. Just calling it 194. So you're making 1366 divided by 6. So you're keeping 87.57% of your check before your fucking deductibles for insurance and shit. But you said with all the deductibles, you're losing about $500. 1060 divided by 1560. 67.95. Am I right? Yeah, so after all that, you end up with you end up with $120.40 to just use for um no, that's after taxes. And health insurance and shit like that. My hope is to remove that uh health insurance issue so that they are getting their 87% paycheck and then they have $984 left over. That is my intention. So instead of having 120 left over, they have 984 left over. Mm. And you can do significantly a lot more planning with that $984 than the other thing is retirement. I'm like, pension. Pension is where I would like to go with that. Instead of these 401ks where you essentially bet your money away. No, you put in time with the company. After you're retired, we give you a pension. Um, and again, that's a portion of the profits of the company goes into a trust, and that trust is goes to as a uh, beneficiary. The trust would be anyone retiring from the company after a set amount of years. Typically, that is 20 years. Hmm. So that is how I would like to do it. I understand why 401ks are um, popular, not just with employers, but like employees. because like, oh, well, I can take my 401k wherever. Um, and so if I only put in 5 years, I'm not fucked out of that. And my thing is that you would be better off getting a third party Roth ROA or ROI, um, or no, it's a Roth IRA. And uh, if you're wanting something that is not tied to your employer, because those are more stable and have less penalties for pulling the money early. Also, less taxes involved. Um, Last time I checked. Check with the financial planner on that one. Um, Before you go doing it. But I remember being so frustrated with my 401k, and the Roth IRA was significantly easier to deal with. Um, and especially since my Roth IRA was not through a company. So, but I would prefer to have a pension plan that's like, okay, you worked for us for 20 years. We're going to make sure you have something when you get out. And that something is going to be X amount of wages. Um, that's adjusted for uh, per year for the market increase in expenses, cost of living expenses. Um, I may have been running through this shit a little bit too much. Um, yeah. um, yeah, yeah. Um, well, it's like, why don't companies cover insurance if they can't? And I was like, well, because they're about profits, and that cuts into your profits that you can give to your investors because you have to take it out before you pay your investors. So, um, since there and so there was some lobbying done for a period of time where the companies and the employees both were penalized tax-wise for the company covering 100%. That has since been resolved, and that is no longer the case. So companies can go back to covering it, but they likely won't because of the fact that it interferes with the profits of their investors, straight up. Um, no, the ones that are the worst about it are the ones that are beholden to private equity firms because they legitimately don't give a shit. You're just a number on a spreadsheet. Uh, which funny as I have a spreadsheet up. Um, well, we're hoping not to be, right? Yeah. My thing is like, okay, what is the intentions of us earning money as a company? If it's to get rich, then yeah, pay the $15 an hour. Um, but if our intention is just to put out good, fun, um, immersive experiences, live performance experiences, um, then that is in direct conflict of um, maximizing profits. Um, because you cannot truly give fully immersive and uh, enjoyable experiences without putting in funds aggressively. I feel like, and um, you also have to meet people where they're at as far as their living wages as to whether or not they can afford that experience, because you can have the most immersive and fun experience, but if people can't afford to come to it, then the entire thing falls apart. So it's like, how do we get it so that we can pay our people 26.15 an hour, bare minimum, um, and be able to give those immersive experiences? Well, something has to give, and typically that is profit for investors. Well, currently the only investors are you and I, and neither of us is looking to get rich. So both of us both of us are perfectly happy with the same 26.15 an hour. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, okay, so what can you pay investors, or what are you legally required to pay investors? What are you legally allowed to do for investments, or like uh, um, invest back into your company? What are you legally allowed to donate, right? Um, so the minimum for investors is like 30% of net profits. And it's up to 90%. And then you can invest 100%, 70% back into company, and then you can invest unless you defer interest payments to investors, and that's a whole nother blah. In which case you can take 100%, but it's up to 70%. Um, and then the same with charitables, only you can't defer payment to investors to make charitable donations. Um, but as a company, you can only do 70%. Um, a maximum of 70%. Uh, I'm having to like refresh my brain on all this, and it's like, meh, tax code sucks ass to read. Tax code absolutely sucks ass to read. Um, so, mm, so at this point, um, passive income. Uh, Passive income means that you barely touch the fucker. That's like investments. That's in like stocks and stuff like that. Uh, this is this is active, and Okay. Okay. Where are we getting income from to start with? Well, um, one is purchases like the merch. It is going to be things like when someone uses an emote and subscribes to the Twitch and blah blah blah. It is things like, oh, if someone donates to the Twitch, that counts as income. Um, there's a whole slew of things in which those are those small bits. The part that we actually need is what's called capital investments. Now, capital investments can come from investors. Um, it can come from loans. It can come from grants. Um, those are things that we have to put in effort to get. I'm working on the finding the grants for us because there's supposedly some for our sector. Um, so uh, loans are like difficult to deal with. They can be a bit backstabby. Um, there's actually more protections for having an investor come through rather than capital coming from loans. Um, but your best option is grants if you can get them. Because grants do not necessarily require payback so long as the funds are actually used for what you said they're going to be used for and not used inappropriately. As soon as you use them inappropriately, one, you can be dinged for it for misuse of funding, which can involve jail time depending on where that grant came from. They do it all the time. It's why the laws even exist. And we wonder why they're so bitchy. It's like, why is this law so bitchy? Well, because someone did something rude, and then we had to make a law about it to make sure future people couldn't do the same rude fucking thing. So, um, yeah, that is pretty much the financial blah. Um, I don't know that there's much more that we really want to go into unless someone has some kind of question about it. And wants to be like, hey, what about this? Did you think about this? Um, uh, or, wants to give blurb about like fucking um their living expenses, um, and their lived experiences with dealing with bills and shit. So, what do we want to do Friday? It'll be the 15th. Um, yeah, I'm not even sure what's going on the 15th. Um, I don't know if there's any events or anything going on. Mhm. Sweet. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. There's a let's see. Um on the 15th there's a disco night at the Admiral Theater. There is, yeah, it's like ABBA and 70s and 80s. Um, the waiting room lounge has something, release show, Criteria record release show. I don't know. It's at 8 o'clock that night. There's a 90s to today pop punk show um, at Bogey's Bar and Grill. Wonders Rising covers, yeah, Wonders Rising covers hits from bands like Jimmy Eat World and Nirvana. Um, Early Bird Dance Party uh, um, is an evening of nostalgic dancing and glam fits at Studio Dundee to benefit the Center for Immigrants and Refugee Advancement. So, theater Princess Bride is playing at the Holland Center. We can't take camera and everything into that. Oakview has an art sale pop up happening. Um, Mavericks baseball is happening. Mm, yeah. A lot of these we're not going to be able to take, because they're not like walk around air type things that um we can live stream from. Uh, mhm. Yeah, we could. Oh yeah. Mhm. 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 Yeah. Who what? Um, yeah. Sometimes. Give me a second. Report for spam scam spots and tampering next. Viewership tampering. Advertising third party viewer bot site. Mm, done. Sometimes. So yeah, I don't know as far as like stuff we want to do. Um, so we may just go walking through someplace and get outside and see what's going on in Omaha. Um, yeah, and we need to test whether or not it works. Yeah, and doing it at a non-event system allows for uh, us to test with a little less uh, noise. So I think Friday we'll just do and explore the area um, we want to do downtown. Yeah, yeah, hmm yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's all I can't eat it. Mm, because it is Beyond Meat. It's like Beyond Beef and stuff. And the tofu, yeah, but it's cross contamination with the aggressively. That's why I like burger. Well, yeah, you'll get fries. I will have to get my stuff from somewhere else. So I cannot like agree with you whether or not they are because I unfortunately, yeah. But if someone's like, why isn't Joy eating the fries? It's like because Joy likes not dealing with tummy issues. So, all right, we'll catch everyone on Friday somewhere. Yeah, we'll probably put something out on like the Facebook or something. Yeah, maybe Instagram. Yeah, something that we both are really bad about keeping up with. All right. Talk to everyone